Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today, either live in person or watching a recording later. My name is Jen. I'm on the Impact team here at Action Builder, Action Network. And today we're going to be talking about data in Action Builder. This is the third in our Action Builder 100 series. So if you missed weeks 1 and weeks 2, you can learn more and register at the link provided in the chat here, getting started and tasks and events. But today we're going to talk about several things to get us started. You won't be able to unmute, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll try to get through them as we go. If you have any questions that I can't get to, you can always reach out to support@actionbuilder.org, especially if you have specific questions about your own organization's data that we might not be able to dig into, but our support team, either me or one of the colleagues that I work with on the support help desk, will be able to get a response to you. Okay, so some things that we're going to talk about today. We'll give you an introduction to how data works in Action Builder, how to create fields as well as sections, managing your data in campaigns. We'll talk about how to troubleshoot common CSV file issues that happen when you do mass uploads for some folks. And then if there's any remaining time and questions that we haven't gotten to, we'll do an open Q&A. Okay. So I'm going to share my Action Builder instance with you. And here, if you go to the Info tab of the admin menu, you will see your most recently created entity type in the dropdown at the top, and then the custom fields that are created for that entity. On the right-hand sidebar, there's always a reminder of what the field types are. And one thing to keep in mind with Action Builder is that all of the fields are either standard, multiple choice, so general questions with a defined set of responses, or they're standard plus. So it is a multiple choice question with a number attached. How many people are you bringing with you to an event? That's a number attached. They're standard with a date attached. What action did you take? And then what date did you take it? They're standard with an address attached. Which work site do you work at? And then what is the address for that work site? Standard with a note, so multiple choice, what issues do you care about? And then a brief short response on why they care about that issue. And standard with a shift, like what volunteer shift are you available? Weeknights, weekends, daytime, evenings, and then the times and days. So all of them are going to be multiple choice, which will allow you to search and filter on them, and then you can append information in these other field types. So if you ever need a refresher on what they are, they're over here on the right-hand side. You can also create different custom fields depending on your entity type. So here we have, for example, voter registration sites. And then perhaps there's a card signature. So maybe that's a confirmation of the person who's working at that voter registration site. And open hours, what time are they open? Those may be different than, for example, if I select people, people, you might track things like what's their job class, where do they work, or what actions have they taken, how are they impacted, etc. You may see that there are multiple sections of fields here. In Action Builder, all of our fields, responses, and sections work alphabetically. So A field, committees, district, legislative session, party. This is alphabetical. The responses within a field, aging committee, agriculture, banks, children and families, those responses are alphabetical. And then you can break down your fields into sections so that you can group fields that are similar to each other or based on the same topic belong together. For example, job info, activism, work information, union information, etc. A couple of other things about this info page. You can create sections that have this bullseye thing next to it. So these are universal field sections. And that means that any of the fields that are in this section, if an entity exists in multiple campaigns, you will be able to see the response to that field in every campaign where the person or other entity exists. If it is a standard section, you will only be able to see the response in the campaign that you're in. So here, let's say we have lots and lots of questions in this section. So let's say we wanted to split it up more. I can create a new section. So if we scroll up to the top, there's a button for add section, or I'm sorry, a link for add section. And you can give it a name. So we'll call it training section. You can determine whether you want to make it universal or not. One thing to note is that once you make a section universal, it cannot be made ununiversal. And once you make a standard section, it cannot be made universal. So this is basically your chance to decide whether the fields in this section are going to be visible across campaigns or not. So we'll make a standard section for now, and I'm going to click Save. Now, one thing you'll note, I first created it so it's right at the top, but one thing you'll note is here, in this campaign, we wanted union information to be right at the top, but it's alphabetical. Union is very low in the alphabet. So we've tricked the page by giving it a number. And you can number your sections if you want them to appear in a specific order rather than default alphabetical. Okay, so here we have our training section. So we have a couple of options here. We can either add a brand new field. So if I click Add Field, I have all of these options for creating new fields. So here we may say, Action Builder data training, because we want to keep track of whether someone attended Action Builder data trainings. Perhaps we want to make it a date field because we want to know the dates that people came to the training. So here, I'm going to make it a date field. And now you have a bunch of other options that you can choose from. If you have any questions about what these mean, these little eyes, if you hover your mouse over it, it will give you more information. So this is not the only time to learn about what's happening here. Allow any user to add new responses will allow any organizer or activist or lead to add a response to the drop-down menu of multiple choice options. So if this is really helpful for things like issues. So if there's a list of maybe 5 issues and you want people to be able to add issues that folks care about, you can toggle it on by clicking the toggle, and anyone will be able to add it to the drop-down menu. It's less useful for things like fixed options, like names of committees that you might have, or names of trainings that you have available, or particularly work sites. Because in that case, maybe somebody puts JFK high and another person puts Kennedy high and another person puts Kennedy HS, and it can get very messy very fast. So you want to think about whether to allow to add new responses. This isn't about the responses attached to individuals. On this page here, it's about whether they can add to the multiple choice drop-down menu. You can also choose to make a field read only for anyone other than admins. So this is useful when it's fixed information, like maybe it's from a voter file or an employer file, and you don't want anyone to be able to change it. Maybe it is a sync with Action Network, our sister tool, and you want to be able to keep track of who took which action. And you don't want folks who are in the field to be able to modify changes because you want that to sync. So you can toggle this on to make it read only. And then allowing users to attach files to responses lets organizers and activists and other users upload an answer that is, or upload a field attached to the answer. So perhaps it is a campaign where you're collecting photographs of people holding up signs that say, stamp out ICE in my community. You can actually take that photo and attach it to your response. Or maybe it is a letter to the editor campaign, and you want to attach a PDF of the page in the newspaper or website where it was printed. You can toggle on allow users to attach files to responses. So we'll toggle that on so that I can show you how it works. Here, the response options, you have two options, multi-select or single select. Multi-select is helpful for when someone might have multiple responses to the same question that you would like to preserve. So, issues that they care about or trainings that they've attended, volunteer shifts that they've taken, actions that they've taken. Those are all great examples of multi-select. Single select are things where a person can only have one response. And if you update the response, you want it to overwrite the previous answer and only have one answer. So these might be things like registered political party or current work site if you're using an info field work sites, things like that. So we'll leave it as multi-select for the moment. Allow multiple of the same response is only applicable if you're doing multi-select. So if I click single select, it disappears. This allows you to have multiple responses of the same response. So what does that mean? So don't allow is, say I have a list of issues that someone cares about. Every time someone cares about the issue, I can add it as a response, and the date associated is only going to be the most recent date. It's not going to say childcare, 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 childcare for every conversation that I have. It's just going to say it once with the most recent date that that was updated. When you allow multiple of the same response, it does track that. And that's really helpful for if it's a recurring action, for example, that someone might take. So maybe you have Wear Red Wednesdays, and it's like Wednesday the first week of January, Wednesday the second week of January, Wednesday the third week of January, and you can see every time that that action was taken. So in this case, I'm just going to do don't allow so that you can see kind of a standard multi-select, which is one of the more common uses of these fields. And we'll select save changes. That was a lot of information. One more thing about this section that we've just created, or this field that we've just created. In order for a field to show up in a campaign, you need to be able to add at least one response. So here I'm going to click the add response field and I'm going to say Action Builder 100 Series 103 webinar. And so that's what we're doing today, the 103 webinar. You can also add other responses if you'd like. Oops. Here we go. So now it alphabetized. Um, you can add other responses now if you'd like, or you can also add them via upload. So here, maybe it's a custom training, or maybe it's part of an onboarding training. And so these will be our multiple choice options. And then the date will be the date that the person attended it. Okay. That is creating a new field. The other thing you can do is you can move fields between sections, rather. So for example, these two grade level questions, say I want to move them from member information to the new training section I just created. I can click on the three dots here and select move to another section, and then choose the section that I want to move it to. When I click save, if I scroll to that section, I can see that it's been added there. Again, I think I mentioned this already, but you cannot move fields between universal sections and standard sections. So you can move standard to standard, and you can move universal to universal, but you can't move in between the two. And part of that is because if you're storing data in those fields already, there's an expectation of the data security or the privacy of those fields. Okay. So now we've created a field for this entity. And now we want to use it in our campaign. So here I'm going to go to the campaign page. I have a campaign created already. And I'm going to click on it and click Customize and go to the Info section within the campaign. And you can see all those fields exist in an instance, but they haven't been turned on for this campaign. And so I click the Edit Info button. I'm going to scroll down to my training section. And I'm going to check the box and turn on these two fields in my training section. And so now, and I'm going to leave all the others unchecked. And so now just those two fields appear in this campaign. And this allows you to create as many fields as you need, as if you have different campaigns happening, maybe a worker community organizing campaign around Walmart or another big box store has different fields that are needed uh, than a transportation campaign, a local public transportation campaign. And so you can create those fields and turn some of them on in one field, in one campaign, but not others. The other thing you can do, if I click this Edit Info button, is you can turn on some responses, but not others. So here, if I open the Issues field, I can see that there are a whole bunch of responses. But maybe in this campaign, we're really only focusing on collecting info about a few of them. And so I can, rather than checking the box next to the field to add all of the responses and add the whole field, I can then check the boxes next to just the ones I want to turn on. And then again, when I see just that field has been turned on and just those few responses that I've checked off. The other thing that you can do is if you have and one of the things that we recommend is that once you have your campaign set up in with all of the fields turned on in the way that you want, what you can do is save it as a template and don't put any information in it. And then on the campaigns tab, anytime you need to create a new campaign, rather than clicking the new campaign button and having to turn on each of the fields that you want specifically and selecting responses and all of that, you can click these three dots and select duplicate campaign. And you can say, yes, please duplicate this campaign. And I'm going to say Action Builder Training 2, and I'm going to save it. And you can see that on the info page, all of those fields that we already turned on and everything we selected is already set up. So I don't need to go in and edit that information manually. In this particular case, there's only 3 questions, so it's not a huge deal. But if you have lots of entities and lots of questions, it may be useful to have that template set up for you, so that you don't have to do it from scratch every time. Okay. Other things that you can do with your data in Action Builder, you can upload lists and you can upload brand new lists and match on lists. So if we go here to the Uploads menu under the Admin menu and select New Upload, you can see over on the right-hand side an example template that you can download that gives you the structure you'll need to upload your data. I have a file set up here already. So a couple of things to note here. I'm going to open this up. Hopefully everyone can see. Action Builder ID is created every time you create a new entity in Action Builder. You can always use that to match folks. So if I get a list and I want to update the information, I can use Action Builder ID. You can also use external IDs that you create and you can match. So here, for example, employee ID, maybe there's a voter ID or a member ID. Some folks have used work email. One thing to keep in mind is that custom IDs in Action Builder are case sensitive. So we may want to make sure that it is all lowercase when you upload, make sure that it is all lowercase before you match. And then if you create work email as an ID field, you can match on it. Here we have first, last, middle, suffix, and preferred name. These are all the fields associated with people's names or an entity's names. If you have selected the option for your entity to have one name, the options will be first name and preferred name. So for example, if it's educational institutions is your entity, the first name would be the full name, so The Ohio State University, and the preferred name would be something like OSU. Pronouns, the built-in pronouns are she, her, he, him, and they, them. But you can also create your own custom pronouns. So for example, if you want them, he, you can do that and it will add it under other automatically. Assessments are your raw numbers that you've created as your assessments. There should be no spaces. And it should only be the numbers that you have as your assessment ratings. So our system goes 1 through 5. So we could do, and you can upload archived assessments. Age and date of birth are typically related to each other. If you upload date of birth, age will update automatically. If you update an age, it will not update automatically. So date of birth is really the way to go if that is something that is important to your campaign. Things have recently changed with our languages. You can now mark one preferred language or multiple spoken languages. The default is English for both. But you can add your own with an upload or manually. With an upload, if someone has multiple under spoken languages, the delimiter between them is a pipe. And we also use the 2-letter ISO language abbreviation codes, which you can find anywhere on the internet, including Wikipedia. I've just added a link in the chat. You can add notes and dates that the notes were made. So, had a conversation, and the date is 1/11/26. If you do not add a date, then today's date will override the date. For emails, you can have a column for email and email type. And if you have multiple emails, you can put them in multiple columns. We'll talk when we get to the upload page. You don't need the type if they're all the same type, but you can also kind of mix things up a little. So this person, for example, their home and work are backwards. It's not a perfect list, so we're going to use these types. You can also do multiple phone numbers, extensions if it's a landline. Addresses need at least state or province. They can have state and postal code, and it will not appear on the map, but it will save that information. You need a full address for it to be geocoded to a spot on the map. There's also 2 address types. There's the physical address for their home address. There's also mailing address for PO boxes. So this is to help distinguish between folks that you can do home visits with versus folks that, you don't want to home visit a PO box. And then related to the way that we talked about the standard or standard plus fields, our responses will then be 2 columns. So a standard field response is just 1 column, but if you have a notes type field, it is your note multiple choice and then the note attached to that multiple choice. So here, for example, I'm going to delete these because we don't need them, but we do have our date field. And I'm going to do AB 103, and the date we're attending it is on the 26th, on the 15th of 2026. And let's copy it down. Let's see, AB. And then the same thing for all of these other types. If it's a number field, it is the multiple choice and the number attached, the address attached, etc. And then shifts are a little bit more complicated. You can find out more in our documentation, but basically multiple choice and then Monday through Sunday responses. So I have my information here. I have employee IDs for some people, but action builder IDs for more. And then some people don't have any at all. So we're going to match on action builder ID. And so what that is going to do is it's going to update these people with the responses that are on this sheet. And it's going to add the people who don't have information on this sheet. So I'm going to File, Save As, and I'm going to save it on my desktop as a CSV UTF-8, which helps eliminate a lot of problems that some folks have. So if you just save it as a CSV, if you have any names that have special characters like a tilde or an accent mark over an E, an O with an umlaut or a slash through it, CSV standard is not going to preserve that information. You'll need a CSV UTF-8. So we'll say AB 103 training and today's date and save it to my desktop. Other things that UTF-8 can help with are kind of hidden weird characters that might be in your data. Another thing that tends to throw off our uploaders is if you have a carriage return. So for example, if this field was last name instead of last name, you will get an error message that says that that is not a processable file. So make sure that there are no carriage returns in your data. Okay. One thing that I want to do here is add an address. Okay. I'm going to just save that. One thing you can see is that New England and New Jersey addresses often have postal codes that start with a 0, and sometimes saving it doesn't always capture it correctly. And we'll talk about that when we do our upload, which I'm going to do right now. So here, again, you click on Uploads and go to New Upload. There are 3 types of upload. We are not going to talk about these 2 advanced types today. Delete entities will delete your entity completely from your instance as well as your SQL mirror. The data is gone forever and cannot be recovered. Remove from campaign will keep an entity in your instance, but remove it from a specific campaign. But today we're going to talk about standard upload. So here you can either browse for your file or drag and drop it from the folder that it's in. So I'm going to drag and drop my file. In the drop-down menu, I'll select the campaign that I want to upload it to. So here we'll say, what did we call it? 103 Action Builder Training 2. And these are people. So from the drop down, I'll select people. If you have multiple types of entities, you can upload to anyone that you want, but make sure that you do them one at a time. So people need to be uploaded to people, organizations to organizations, churches to churches, etc. Here in this section, you'll choose the ID number you want to use to match your records. So we noticed that we had more Action Builder IDs. So we're going to do Action Builder ID on the left-hand side is the ID in our instance that we're going to match with. And Action Builder ID on the right-hand side is the name of the column in our file that we're going to match with. There are 7 rows that don't have an ID, and those will be created as new. And we know that, and so that's okay. But this is a good check to make sure that you're matching to the correct place if there's not matches. Advanced preferences, we won't go into too much. We hide it under this button here because they are difficult if you accidentally overwrite something. So you can overwrite your existing data and you can clear out data using an upload. So if you have a blank value on your spreadsheet, but no blank value, there's already a value in your instance, you can overwrite it and erase it, which is why we hide it here under Advanced Preferences. Okay, so we've selected our file and our campaign and entity type. We're matching on Action Builder ID. We're going to confirm and upload our settings. And now this section will let us match. On the left-hand side are the fields in Action Builder where we want to put the data. And on the right-hand side are the fields on our spreadsheet where we'll find the data to put in. You can see that the system tries to map it automatically based on the names of the fields. So first name, last name, middle, preferred, suffix, pronouns, assessment, date of birth, DOB. It found the information as best as it could. If it couldn't find those, we can map another core attribute and find those data or find those columns to update that data, but it found them correctly. We've got the language that it's mapping to. Here, it's going to map to the address information. The default country is typically the United States, but you can change it. Currently, we can manage addresses in the US, Canada, and the UK. Keep in mind, if you're uploading addresses, the country code for the United Kingdom is GB and not UK as part of the ISO international codes. Here you can see that there's an error with the postal code and there's an exclamation point. So let's find out what's going on here. So if we click on it, you can see what the rows are that have a problem. And look at that, there are 2 rows where the zip code is only 4 numbers instead of 5. So when something goes wrong, and this happens with email addresses, phone numbers, and addresses, when something goes wrong, you can proceed, download a CSV of invalid rows and just proceed and worry about who those messed up addresses are later. For something like this, where we know that it's the zip code, there is a built-in system that will append a 0 to the start of the zip code. And so we're going to press the run button to run that. And then it fixed it. And here, there is an empty address type. Show invalid rows. This row doesn't have a value in that field. So let's run it and it'll make it physical. If you don't have an address type column, you can also use a static value instead. So click these 3 dots and you can choose a static value. So if they're all home addresses, you can just make them all labeled physical. But if you know some of them are home addresses and some of them are PO boxes, and you have a column, you can map that column. So if you have multiple email addresses, again, here you can see that it says email, it found that automatically, but say it only found the first one. I'm going to delete that. Say it only found the first one. So I'm going to map it to email, and I'm going to map the type to email type. And now click add another email, and it will let me map my second email. Email 2. And here I'm going to click these 3 dots, switch to a CSV column, and select email to type. If you had a third email column, you could add another one. So you just need you need to have the email in multiple columns, not all in one column separated by a comma. So if you have more than one, each one needs to be in its own separate column. The same thing with phone numbers. Here, none of our phone numbers had an extension, so I'm going to click the trash can, but we can see that there are errors. So I'm going to find out what the errors are. And here, I'll see what the problem is with the phone number. One, two, three, four, five, six. I don't know what's wrong with it, so I'm going to download the CSV and look it up later and delete invalid rows from this. Here, these are all cell phones, so I'm going to make it a static value. And I think the error here is that it was blank. So, excuse me. Once it does its best to map everything that it can based on the names of the fields, you'll see this section here. There are 5 columns on my CSV that are not mapped. Age, which we didn't have, phone extension and phone number type, which we were both blank, and then date field response and date fields content. And this is where we had the training information, but the name was different. So here under fields, I'm going to select add one now, select the field that I want to map to from the dropdown. So action builder data training. And you can see this again is the structure that we talked about earlier. So the response name is date field response, and the response date is the date field's content. And you can see a preview over here that this is going to be AB 103, and this is the date. So we know these 3 are blank. We left them blank on purpose. We're going to confirm the mappings. And now here in this step, you have the opportunity to map. On the left-hand side are the responses that appear on your spreadsheet, and the right-hand side are what you want them to be when they're put into Action Builder. So this is backwards from the way that it is on all the other fields, but once you get to this response mapping section. So on the spreadsheet, I called it AB 103. But when I created the field in the database, it's called AB 100 Series 103 Webinar. So I'm going to click this, and anything that has this as a response is going to be put into that bucket, into that response. And the same thing, if there are typos, you can map them to the same response. And so any of the ones that have either AB 103 or ABB 1033 are both going to be mapped to AB 100 Series 103 webinar. So if what is on your spreadsheet is a little bit different than what is in your Action Builder instance, it's fine as long as you take this step to map it correctly when you do your uploads. So now we'll confirm our response mapping and review and confirm. This is like your last chance to make sure that what you're doing is correct and what you expect. And we take this step because uploads cannot be undone. The best we can do is do another upload um, and replace that information. So you want to take a minute to consider we're matching on Action Builder ID. We're expecting that there are about 109 records in the file, 26 columns in my file, only one response mapped, one custom field mapped. And so, yes, I check this box that says, yes, I know that they may be added as new or moved from other campaigns. Yes, I've reviewed all the fields and I'm continuing. You'll see file received, and that lets you know that the file is being sent off to our servers. Once the file has been received, it will switch from file received to file processing. And so let's refresh the page and see what happens. And so it's been changed to processing. The larger the file, the longer it takes to process, but typically it takes at minimum about 10 minutes. If you click on the processing icon, you'll see the overview of what happened, what is in progress, and how many rows have been processed and all of that. And then you'll always be able to see that information as a history of what's happened in your instance. So this upload was uploaded on this date by this user. It was creating people and it went to this campaign and it was 17, right? So you can really get a sense of where did it go? Where did it come from? And then this source column is the original file that you uploaded, that you mapped. So we're not going to wait around for this to process, but you can see it in real time as information gets added to the campaign. So if I click on my campaign, I can see, some of these assessments have been added. These folks have been moved in from other campaigns. So you can see some of the information from another campaign, like this icon, which means the person is a user. You can see that I made a mistake here on my file. So I may want to do another upload where I overwrite bad information with a blank field. And then when I click into a record, I'll be able to see if this record came from another campaign. It will contain all of the information on this profile page that was in that campaign as well. And then on the info tab, I will only see my fields. Or if I'm using a universal field, I will see the response from that universal field, even if that campaign is not the one that added it. Okay, that is a lot of information to absorb in just an hour. If there are any last minute questions, I'm happy to take them on. Otherwise, as I mentioned, you can contact us at support@actionbuilder.org if you have specifics about your own data. If you're in the middle of the onboarding process right now, our our team will work with you to make sure that you're setting up the fields correctly. If you are not an admin, you will not be able to upload. But if you're a lead, you may be able to make some changes within a campaign, like choosing which fields to turn on or off, or adding responses from the info tab of the Customize menu. So thanks so much for joining us today. We hope to see you next week or in our next training on Action Builder 104, how to manage your data with the Action Network Action Builder Sync. Otherwise, we'll see you in the future, and best of luck with your campaigns.